Hola, peeps. I hope you are well. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, and I got a new release today, and I thought I'm excited about it. It came in the mail, and I jumped for joy, and I want to talk about it, and it's right here in front of me, so what better time to talk about it? And I've been wanting to do an Orbital video for a long time because I love Orbital. And they just did a series of reissues for their first album called the Green Album, and I'm going to talk about it. So before I start, I wanted to mention some of you have asked me about this shirt that I wear. You see this? It says nothing on it. And it had like an Arby's hat. It's got kind of like an Arby's hat fashioned to the top. This is not an Arby's shirt, but it is supposed to trick people into thinking that. This is a shirt from a Twitter account, and that's what this entity is. It's a Twitter account basically called Nihilist Arby's. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I try to support these guys. They have a website called Anxious and Angry. If you want to check out what they do on their website, it's called anxiousandangry.com. They sell records and stuff, and they just have a point of view. But basically, Nihilist Arby's, I think, is run by these anxious and angry people. And Nihilist Arby's is just a Twitter account, and it posts out extremely funny tweets. And I don't even know if it's active anymore. I checked it recently and I didn't see any new posts on it. But it's fucking hilarious. And I have supported them for a long time, probably at least a decade now. And I try to buy these shirts every time one of these wears out, I go and buy another one. So when you see me wear these shirts over and over, it's not necessarily the same shirt. I have like an arsenal of these nothing shirts because I want to support them. I really love Nihilist Arby's. So check that out. Go to Twitter and check out Nihilist Arby's. I've gotten several questions over the years referring to my nothing shirts. So I highly recommend you pick one up and support them any way you can because they're really funny. And Nihilist Arby's. Okay. I'm just going to hold it up. I got this in the mail today. Check this out, man. Orbital, the Green Album. Here it is. They've done a number of reissues of this. I noticed there's like a standard double vinyl on black, and then there's like a double vinyl on green and red vinyl, and then there's a box set right here. There's a more expansive digital version that I got through Apple Music. I'll get to that in a minute. That was my only distaste I had for this entire release party was the digital version, but I'll get to that. I just got the big box set. And to me, this is the definitive version. And this is a really cool box set. And this is referring to, of course, Orbital's debut 1991 album. I think 91, right? They had a couple of singles leading up to this point, but this is their first album. And to a lot of people, this is their best album, and I wouldn't argue with them. It's hard for me to pick, and I'm going to put this down for now because it's heavy. It's hard for me to pick. In fact, I'm going to take all the contents out of this box so I can share it with you. Hard for me to pick a favorite album from Orbital. I always I wrestle with their first four albums being my favorites. By the way, you get a slip mat. I ordered this from the Orbital website. And if you ordered it from the website, you got the box set, but you also got this, an autographed flat. And I slipped it into the shrink wrap here. I broke open the shrink wrap, as you can see. I took the contents out. They're sitting below me, and I'll show those in a minute. But buying this from the Orbital website basically meant that you got this free autographed flat, which I thought was cool. And I like supporting Orbital as much as I can. So I slipped the flat in here. I also slipped this slip mat in here. There's the original cover, but it's basically the same thing as the slip mat. But who doesn't love this album? Who's into electronic dance music especially from the 90s? There's the hype sticker. I guess I'm a little surprised that they did this box set on black vinyl. I thought maybe the box set might get some weird, wacky colored vinyl, but I'm happy it's black. I prefer black, usually sounds better, and I have no complaints. I have given this record a test run today. I just got done listening to the records, and they sound fantastic. It's a good pressing, and it's a really impressive box set, man. And I'll get into the reasons why. Again, if you ordered from the website, you get the autograph flat. I think all box sets include this slip mat. So, you get some decent bells and whistles. You also get a double LP of extras, which feature a couple of unreleased tunes and then some previously released tunes, and I'll get into that. But as I was talking about before, it is hard for me to choose my favorite Orbital album. But it's between the first four. My opinions change. Some days it's the Green Album. Some days it's Snivelization. In fact, most days I feel like it's Snivelization. I always kind of default to that record when I think of my favorite Orbital album. It's always like, oh, it's got to be Snivelization, right? They just took a huge leap in their sound with that album. And then I thought what they did with Insides kind of piggybacked onto what they had done with Snivelization. Insides is brilliant too. I have to be honest too, the only 4 albums of Orbitals that I think are out and out brilliant are those first 4. I've listened and bought all of their records since then, but I don't think they've been able to recapture the magic they had on those first 4 albums. But for a lot of people, this is their favorite album from Orbital. And I wouldn't argue with that. This was a lot of people's intro to this band, and this is such a good album. It's aged in some ways, but that's part of its charm. It's very much a early '90s ravey dance album, and they were one of among the first bands to just put out a full dance album at the time, like an album, and it works. Again, I don't think it's aged particularly well, but that is part of its charm. And I'll get into what I mean by that. This is a really fun album. For me, my intro to Orbital was Chime. I think tons of Orbital fans, that's how we delved into this band. That was our first experience with Orbital, Chime. I bought the Chime 12-inch. And it had Deeper on the B-side. And it's that long version, that super long, like 12-minute version of Chime, and then Deeper was like 15 minutes on the B-side. That was my intro to Orbital. Chime was never on this original track listing. They released this in the States, and it had a different track listing. It had Satan on it. It had Midnight. Those tracks were single only in the UK. This track listing on this reissue is the UK track listing, which I think is a good idea. That's a good move. Because if you want Midnight and Chime and those tracks, you can just go buy the 12 inches. Those 12 inches are still floating around out there. And the good news is, if you get the expanded digital version of this album, you're going to get everything. Every fucking thing they did at that point. Every track, every B-side, every remix. It's all been remastered and re-upped into the digital deluxe version. And if you have Apple Music, it's there. You don't have to buy anything. You just go to Apple Music and you download that digital deluxe. And it is awesome. It sounds good. Every track you could think of. Everything. Even the weird remixes, like the rap and rhyme reason mix or whatever the hell that was of Satan. Is it Rhyme and Reason? I don't know. Terrible remix, by the way. But you get the Sasha mix of Midnight. You get the remix of Choice. You get Choice, period, because Choice wasn't on the album in the UK or Europe. It was on the US version, but that's been remastered. Everything's been remastered. And I have a short story to share about these two. I'll get to that in a minute. I met these guys a couple of times, actually. I saw them live a few times and hung out with them, and they couldn't have been nicer guys. So let's get to the goodies. This is the album itself. The box is stuffed with 4 records in a box. So Lots of stuff to see here. As you see, this is the original. Is that blurry? Sorry about that. This is the original track listing for the European version. And I'm glad they did that, because the US version's fine. I just felt like at the time, I was buying all the records, all the 12 inches and everything they were doing at the time. So when I saw the US version, I saw tracks that I already had. To me, this was the better version because you just get tracks that are exclusive to this European release. See, LP, the CD had CD in there, the tape had MC in there. You know, this is the early 90s. And break open the gatefold. And the writing you see here is some new stuff. New commentary. Like for here it says, sorry, my nose is really itchy today. I'm sorry. Time may be a loop, but sometimes it takes a while to catch up. When Orbital took their early live show to support electronic progenitors, Cabaret Voltaire at London's Subterranea on June 6, 1991. Imagine that show. Anybody watching this, were you at that show? Cabaret Voltaire and Orbital? Jesus. The as yet unconvinced music press sent someone down to take a look at the bizarre spectacle of a rave duo actually trying to play their stuff live. Anyway, you get some commentary on the old school Orbital. Here's one of the inner sleeves. You get the green cover and the red inner sleeves. These inner sleeves look exactly like that original press. I do have the original press, and this is what it looks like. So this is a pretty faithful reissue in terms of the way it looks. And I'll show you one of the labels here. I won't show you both because they both look like this. This is a good pressing. I have no complaints, man. I don't know. It has been remastered. So in my opinion, maybe the sound is, when you remaster stuff, people try to compress sound as much as they can. They crunch it in there as much as they can. This sounds pretty good to my ears. In fact, it might sound a little better because some of those early Orbital tracks, especially Chime and Deeper and stuff like that, you can hear the degradation with those recordings, even on the originals. Like that original Chime 12-inch was never a good press. I used to think it was the press, but I think in hindsight, it's the recording itself. There are some fluctuations in the sound quality, and the volume goes up and down. And if anyone knows what I'm talking about, back me up on this. And in fact, I was listening to the digital deluxe version, and that still exists. So they did remaster it, but it looks like some of the recording, the original recording, was so degraded, even from the time they recorded it, they were not able to remaster or make it sound better. But it doesn't matter. And by the way, that original version of Chime and Deeper is not on the vinyl. I guess that's one of my few complaints about this box set is there are 4 albums here. No complaints about that. And here is the other one right here. But with the way people are pressing wax these days, would it have killed them to maybe put 2 more records in here? I mean, there are 54 tracks on that digital deluxe. I don't know that it would have been overkill to put another double album in here. Make it a 6 album set. Why not? I think people would buy it. The Orbital faithful would definitely buy it. There's LP. Again, basically reversing the colors here. Here's the track listing, by the way. These are the bonuses. This is just 2 albums of bonus shit. You get a combo of previously released and unreleased stuff. That was the most exciting for me. All of the unreleased stuff is on the wax here. And that was the biggest selling point for me because I already have all this stuff that's been released before on their original vinyl issues. But you get Torpedo Town, which I've never heard that. As far as I know, unreleased. You get Satan, of course, LC1, Belfast Wasted, the vocal mix, which I like the instrumental mix better. You get Crime, which is a remix of Chime. They called it Crime, but it's a Chime remix. Fahrenheit 3D3, that's previously released. Open Mind Jam, that's previously released. The other one, Not released before, to my knowledge. I've never heard it, if it has been released. Satan, the Rhyme and Reason vocal mix. That's that mix I was talking about before. And then Midnight, the Sasha mix, also previously released. But how cool is this, man? You gotta love this. Here's the gatefold. Again, the records are pretty well pressed. The jacket's kind of flimsy. The jackets aren't the best. They weren't cut with total precision. You get the perforation notches on the side. It's just kind of cheaper quality. I'm not bowled over by the actual physical presence of the jackets, but it's fine. Here's that reverse coloring scheme. On the other one, you get the green cover and the red inners. On this one, you get the red cover and the green inners. Check that out. You get the... I'll show labels here. Ugh, these are really in there too. Here you go. And again, the pressing itself is fine. I think musically, the music sounds good. It was pressed well. I'm not a huge fan of these inners. They don't really... They're really nice aesthetically. They're very sound and solid and nice. But if you're going to care for your vinyl, you're going to want to get those poly inners. And I haven't done that yet. But usually I take the really thin Japanese rounded ones and I put my records in there and then slip them in here. That way your records are preserved as well as they can be. The records aren't going to be preserved well over time in these thick glossy inners that you get here. They look nice and they feel nice, but they're not nice to your vinyl. There's a tip from Uncle Occasional Feel Good for you. Now, I love this part. A book comes with this, and I'm going to take these out of here. Comes with some flyer reproductions, which I thought was really cool. Check this out. You get a nice, big, thick, hardbound book, and it's really cool. I loved going through this. In fact, let me get to those flyers. Inside the book were these reproduced flyers from back in the early 90s when Orbital was first making a name for themselves and performing live and going to raves and things like that. Here's one for Synergy, right? Synergy versus Decadence. When I look at this font, I'm assuming the Drum Club guys put this on, or the Spiral Tribe guys. It's the same thing. The two drum club guys were from Spiral Tribe. But if you have those early Drum Club albums in 12 inches, you'll notice this font. Their records had that kind of font on them. And they all tended to play together, Orbital and Drum Club and those bands. Here's an early flyer when the Chime record was out. I thought this was really cool. I've never seen these before. If anybody went to these shows, I'd love to hear from you. Space Base. So yeah, reproductions on those. And then this book is so cool. I love this book because a lot of this, you get some biographies, but mainly it's like newspaper clippings from Melody Maker and NME, and I have all of these. So I do have them all, but I don't really care because it's fun to see them reproduced. And there's a picture of the boys hanging out in the studio. But the book compiles a lot of those live reviews they were doing and interviews. And it also, here's a reproduction of a bunch of flyers again. But it also, you get a commentary, track by track. They talk about Speed Freak here and then Oolah. Other bands have done this, like Pet Shop Boys do this a lot. When they reissue their stuff, they'll do like a track by track commentary, which, by the way, Pet Shop Boys have a new album coming out this week. And you bet your ass I'll be talking about that. More commentary. Here's a full page advert for the first album. Love that. And I actually have this. All of my old Melody Maker NME copies, papers that I have, they pull all of that stuff out of here. And I love it because it just takes me back. Because here's a 12-inch cover for the Omen, by the way. I have all of these music papers, but they're all stuffed away and stored away, and it just would be a huge pain in the ass for me to pull them out. So it's really cool to be able to look at these in a book for me, because I own these. I read these, and I know it might be hard to believe in today's times, but Melody Maker and NME were like musical Bibles for me, man. I learned more about music than maybe any other music paper or magazine in the world. NME and Melody Maker, I learned about so much shit through those papers. I tell you, man. I remember this when they gave Single of the Week to Choice. Still have those papers. Anyway, you get the gist of this. Here's a photo of the Choice 12-inch. I think this is the remixes. So this is the remix 12-inch. So, oh my God, I was really impressed by this book. It's 60 pages. And yeah, this is just a nice little bonus you get with the box set. You get the box, you get the book, you get the slip mat. If you ordered it from the website, you get the autograph flat, and you get the flyers. And I think I paid $120 for this. So it's not cheap, but for me, it's a trip down memory lane. I do love this album. Having the bonuses is great. Having the book, the flyers, the slip mat. It was worth it for me. I love this band. The one gripe I have is I spent full price for this on the Orbital website, and then a couple days later they said, "Hey, we'll give you the deluxe digital download version for $40." After all the money I put up for this, they wanted me to throw down $40 additional for the digital version. I was like, what? I mean, number one, I have Apple Music anyway, which is $10 a month, mind you, but they wanted me to spend $40. No. Orbital, shame on you. I'm sure maybe it wasn't maybe that wasn't their call. I don't know. I'm going to show this again. Maybe it wasn't their call. I don't know. But I was not impressed. I was like, really? I spent $100+ on this box set. Now you're going to ask me to go spend $40 on the digital version. Maybe you should just give it to me for free. Maybe you should put some of those tracks on a couple more records. I would have spent another $30 or $40 on this box set if you'd thrown a few more records in there and given me the digital download. It would have been worth a couple $100 at that point. So I thought that was really poor form on Orbital's part to ask additional, and $40. Come on, how much money do I have to spend here, man? So I felt like that was just Orbital kind of, I don't know, ripping the fans off a little bit. Asking for more money after you've already ponied up and spent over $100 on this. But that is what it is. What are you going to do? My only complaint, that is not a complaint about the music. I love the music. But stop milking your fans, Orbital. Come on now. We want to keep liking you. That's a good way to alienate your fan base. So this is the box. I wanted to talk quickly about the time I met Orbital. I met them a few times. The one time I got to actually hang out with them backstage, and it was a very special time for me. I saw them on the Insides tour. It was 96, summer of 96. Crazy to think about that, but 28 years ago now? I was a DJ, and I got backstage, as I did to a lot of shows at that time. And I hung out with the Hartnell brothers, and they couldn't have been more down-to-earth, nice people. They weren't rock stars at all. In fact, I remember sitting there backstage, and I was talking to Paul about Brazil, because I asked him about the lights in their sunglasses that they use when they play live. I was like, did you guys get that from Brazil? And he said yes. He just was like, yep. We saw, Brazil was one of his favorite movies, and it was just one of those moments where you think, you meet a band and you think you're going to be talking about music the whole time, but we didn't. We talked about Brazil. Brazil was a huge movie for the Hartnell brothers. And I remember Paul telling me that it was probably his favorite movie too. And we talked about Brazil. and he talked about how they were inspired to get the little headlight glasses like Robert De Niro had in Brazil. So very special night. I remember Paul sitting there, we were talking, and I'll never forget looking over at Phil, and he was on the phone calling his wife back in England. So those of you who think these guys were wild, out of control, rock and roll partiers, not at all. It was just me and them. Phil was on the phone talking to his wife, and Paul literally was talking to me about Brazil until he fell asleep. We were talking, and then Phil got off the phone, and Phil and I talked a couple of minutes about. I remember he asked me about Portland and how it seemed, the elevation seemed really high. He was impressed by that because it was in the summer, and I remember him asking me like, "How high up are we? Like, I see mountains and the clouds seem really close." And they just had real questions that you would ask somebody, you know. But as we're talking about the weather and the elevation of Portland, Oregon, I look over at Paul and he's snoring. He's fallen asleep on the couch, just snoring, mouth wide open, snoring. So anyway, it not a very rock and roll moment, I guess, but to me it kind of was. Just meeting these guys that I had deep respect for, whose music I really respected. Again, this was on the Insides tour, so that was their output up to that point. Think about that. Everything Orbital put out between this and Insides. I mean, get your mind wrapped around that. There's a lot of brilliant music from 1989 to 1996 when it comes to Orbital. They were on a massive roll. They didn't put out anything bad. Their remixes were amazing. Go listen to the remix of Mindstream from Meat Beat Manifesto if you don't know what I mean. Or their remix of Alchemy by the Drum Club. I mean, these guys did some fantastic remixes, man. Really inspired shit. And this is arguably their best album. Some days this is my favorite album from Orbital, and today is one of those days. I just got this in the mail. I listened to it, and I love it more than ever. It has aged. It has dated. Again, that's part of its charm. This is a very fun record, and it's been really fun to rediscover this and listen to it again. And pick this up. Just know that, you know, if you want that digital deluxe, you can go to Apple Music and get it. Don't be spending $40 for it. That's ridiculous. You can get Apple Music for $10 a month and get everything in its catalog. So I would not recommend you do that, even though Orbital, or at least Orbital's website, is recommending you do that. It's probably not Orbital themselves, but just being asked to pay that extra money, I thought was a big turnoff. But anyway, I feel like that's all I want to say about Orbital. My experience with Orbital, like I said, it started with Chime. And in fact, I think they have, if I remember this book, they have a picture of the original Chime 12-inch. Like a lot of us, this was our intro to this band right here. Chime. This is the first time I heard this band. And there have been many, many hours dedicated to checking out what these guys do and their immense talents in music. And in album form, it all started right here. Go pick this up, man. There are all kinds of different versions if you want this on wax. You can get the box set, which I would recommend you do. There's a black vinyl version. There's a colored, like red and green vinyl version. They went all out. And they've already reissued this. They reissued this like about a decade ago. I have that. I now have 3 different versions of this fucking album. That tells you how much I love this album. I have the original UK vinyl. Then I bought the reissue 10 years ago, and now I've got this. So I do love this band. I do love this album. Orbital, the Green Album. Check it out. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.